All right, this is the review for government quiz number 3. Looking forward to being with you guys tomorrow and seeing how you do on this quiz. This quiz will deal with the progressive era and the administrative state, the bureaucracy, and some of the things we've talked about. It's not going to cover any of the judicial area that we started into last week, so you can kind of get an idea of what you need to study. And of course, we mentioned that progressives felt like they had progressed beyond the concerns of the founders, and that they no longer needed all the checks and balances that the founders had. We talked about the thought that the progressives thought that the government should change with time and should be a changing government. We mentioned progressives like Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, John Dewey, but the president who actually was able to put progressivism into practice was Franklin Roosevelt, and we mentioned him. We talked about the idea that progressives didn't focus on individual rights, kind of like the founders did, but the progressives felt that it was society that really decides the rights of man, and it's society's rights that matter, not necessarily a person's individual rights. We mentioned that progressives felt that they believed in historic relativity. Everything is based on what's going on in history at this time. They, of course, looked at the Constitution as a living document, something that should change as times change. And progressives felt that the government needs to be increased in order to be able to deal with a lot of the problems, current problems, especially problems of an economic nature. We mentioned, of course, Franklin Roosevelt pushed a lot of the progressive ideas in his New Deal, which, of course, was his social welfare program, the laws and things that envelop that. We mentioned that laws today, although laws are passed by Congress, oftentimes they're very generic laws. And the Congress passes a generic law, and then it's the administrative regulators who actually write a lot of the specific laws involved in it. Of course, the problem with that is you've got unelected officials making law, and that's a pretty rough thing. We mentioned the fact that administrators not only have the power to make laws, they also have the power to enforce laws and judge laws, and so that's a serious issue. We mentioned who are administrative regulators, how are they chosen, and of course we gave you 3 ideas there. They have to be experts in their area. We mentioned that they have to be independent. And of course, the progressives wanted to make sure they were definitely progressive. And so they have to be progressive in thought. FDR, of course, felt like the issue that he needed to deal with most was economic tyranny. And so the progressive idea was it's no longer a political tyranny that we have to deal with like the founders, but economic tyranny. And FDR got together a group of people. Of course, we called them the Brain Trust. And those were his economic planners who basically planned out society. These planners felt that really the government needed to be in charge of capital and production. Of course, 2 big key areas in the economy. And of course, that is what progressives felt. We mentioned the definition of bureaucracy, a large, complex organization made up of appointed officials. And before a lot of those officials would get their job, to the idea of patronage, which was, if you give me political support, I'll give you a government job. That was done away with. President Grant started the Civil Service Commission, which was a commission that was formed basically to give government jobs to people based on their merit and their ability. And so some of that patronage went away. We mentioned that the bureaucracy is made up of 15 executive departments, and each of those departments heads has the title of secretary, with the exception of the Department of Justice, which is led by the Attorney General. We also talked about the different various independent agencies. Independent agencies are agencies that were created by Congress to perform a single function, and they operate and answer directly to the president. Some examples of this would be like NASA. NASA is an independent agency, answers to the president. Then there's independent regulatory agencies, and those were created by Congress basically to regulate a certain area in American life. And of course, that's where a lot of the problems of bureaucracy lie today. A lot of unelected people making laws. We also mentioned that the government has some corporations, which are public companies that operate a quasi-commercial business, in a sense, for profit. We mentioned, of course, the post office would be an example of that. It's a business, but it's owned by the government. We mentioned that executive agencies not only have executive power, they also have legislative and judicial power. And the judicial power comes from ALJs, administrative law judges, and these are paid by executive agencies to oversee cases involving executive agencies. The ALJs are called the hidden judiciary because, generally speaking, people don't realize that those judges are actually paid by the agencies themselves. Independent agencies are known as the fourth branch of the government, and today they have a lot of power in regarding the government. The bureaucracy of our country today is what's responsible for a lot of the deficit spending that goes on. And of course, we've mentioned quite a bit about the federal deficit. And so those are some of the concepts that you'll need to know for this quiz. Hope you'll do well at study.